Are live. My name is Rob Dodge. That is Jeff Goodman that you see here with me, and we are going to be talking for a little bit about the ruling that came down from the NCAA in regards to Auburn and Bruce Pearl and the punishments and the sanctions. And 4 years after the fact, I think you tweeted it out, Jeff, 1,536 days after the FBI stood in a press conference that told us that they had the playbook for the
I
way
don't
that
know if
coaches treat college basketball.
did we tweet this
Um,
out? I don't think it went out.
well, it's live. So, yeah. Now everyone's hearing you ask the question about whether or not it got tweeted
I'm
out, but it
just
got
trying to
tweeted out.
listen. I'm just
But
trying to keep you.
it got tweeted out. So why don't you tell me a little bit about talk to me about Auburn and whether or not how you feel about this ruling that came down.
Um, Listen, if I'm Auburn, I'm friggin' ecstatic. I'm throwing a party right now if I'm Bruce Pearl because there was some thought that because of his past issues with the NCAA that and the fact that they hit themselves with a postseason ban last year when it was clear that they weren't going to make the postseason in the NCAA tournament, that the NCAA might say, you know what? No, we're not going to deal with that falling on the sword here. We're going to hit you with another year postseason ban. Or there was some thought that certainly Bruce Pearl could get a double-digit suspension. Instead, no postseason ban beyond what they took last year. And Bruce Pearl gets a 2-game suspension with perhaps the easiest 2 games you could possibly get, right? Like a Nebraska team that is dealing with all sorts of shit around the program right now. I'm told on, off the record, all over the place. Plus, then they get North Alabama. And again, if you're Auburn, you're absolutely ecstatic. If you're Bruce Pearl, you might even have a barbecue tonight.
Yeah, you might. I mean, there's definitely reason to be happy. I think I wasn't alone in expecting that there was probably going to be some kind of show cause penalty for Bruce,
Yeah.
considering what his history is with the NCAA and considering what their kind of track record was when it comes to over punishing people with this FBI investigation. But look, if you're last year didn't really matter, right? They weren't good enough to do anything in the NCAA tournament. I think they finished below 500. This year, they got a team that's dangerous, especially when Alan Flanagan gets back. Jabari Smith is there. Their guards are better than I thought they were going to end up being. So, I mean, this was probably the best case scenario when it comes to Auburn basketball for the ruling that you could have gotten.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the crazy part is I thought back to it today. Again, 1,536 days later from when Chuck Person got arrested. You know what I was doing that day? This shows you how far back it was. I woke up in Newport, Rhode Island that day, and it was Celtics training camp, the opening of it at Salve Regina College. And it was Kyrie Irving's first day of training camp with the Boston Celtics. That's how long ago it was. And I remember that was, the start of Kyrie. The Celtics fans loved them at that point. Obviously, a lot different now. Now, I think Brooklyn Nets fans are starting to figure him out a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's just been so long, and it's like let's just get them all done at this point. Can we just get them all done and put them all out in one day and be done with it? Because I don't think anybody gives a shit about it anymore, Rob,
No.
other than Pat Forty, Pete Thamel, Dan Wetzel, and maybe a few other people. Nobody cares. We want it to be done. Kids are getting paid legally now. So, like, I get that there were rules broken. And it was also, remember, like 40, 50 head coaches were going to lose their jobs. So far, we've had 2, Rick Pitino and Sean Miller. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my biggest issue with this is that it basically holds the coaches and the programs hostage for however long the period is that the investigation takes place. I mean, we saw it with Louisville. We saw a little bit with Arizona and Sean Miller. I think that we've seen it hasn't really impacted Kansas that much, but it hangs over the head of the programs. It hangs over the head of the coaches. And what happens is you get these punishments that come down, and you don't get any kind of what's the credit for time served, so to speak.
Yeah.
There's no recognition of the fact that simply having this in the headlines can blow up programs and blow up careers. And I get it. A lot of this is kind of, for a lot of these places, it's self-inflicted, but it's also like at some point you just kind of have to say, like, our process is fucked. If it takes 4 years to be able to figure something like this out, to give somebody think about that, 4 years 4 years it took to give Bruce Pearl a 2-game suspension. 4 years.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
How does that make sense?
Well, and again, the interesting part of this is Oklahoma State got a 1-year deal that they're serving this year, through the regular process where you can have an appeal. Same thing here with Auburn. They could appeal, I believe, if they want. And all the rest of them are really going through this new IARP process. I call it the AARP process for old people because honestly, I don't think there's any difference, to be honest. I think it's a bunch of bullshit. And they're trying to say it's independent, Rob, but it's not independent. They're trained by the same people. It's honestly, they just threw the word independent before it to make it look better. But I think all these schools are going to serve a similar fate. I think if you're like Arizona, you're probably looking at it right now and saying, all right, we got rid of our coach, John Miller. We got a new coach. Everybody's new here. We shouldn't get anything worse than Auburn got. We self-imposed too. We should be done. Now, we had some academic fraud with Book Richardson and Mark Phelps. Maybe that hits them a little harder, but I think there should be some sort of consistency here, and there has not been. And that's my biggest problem.
When is there ever consistency with the NCAA? When does this stuff never makes sense? And I always go back to this. But the fact that an Oklahoma State program that is 4 years removed, 2 different coaching changes removed, from one rogue assistant paying one player $300 to try to bribe him from bribes to try to get that player to sign with a financial advisor. The fact that they got hit with the 1-year postseason ban after this late, it drives me crazy. And I hate it. And I hate the way this process works. And I hate how long it takes. And it's unfair to the kids that are involved.
I'm glad they didn't hit Auburn now. I mean, I thought about it before the thing came down, Rob, and I was like, Jabari Smith, what if they hit him with a postseason ban today? Again, if you're going to hit anybody with a postseason ban, you should not be allowed to put it in once the school session starts in fall, because then these kids have nowhere to go. But luckily, at least the NCAA did the right thing here. And now I know Auburn fans don't want to hear this. I know they're pissed off at me because I tweeted it. But now you wonder whether Bruce Pearl is in play at a spot like Maryland or something else that may pop open come March, because realistically, 2-game suspension is absolutely nothing. And he's a guy that fits Maryland, as we said on last night's After Dark show. Make sure you subscribe to Field of 68 After Dark on YouTube. But we talked about it for a little bit last night. He is the ideal candidate for Maryland. Now, the only thing is, Rob, can Maryland pay enough to lure him? I think they probably could. I mean, I think if you go to Van Pelt, Kevin Plank, and say, hey, go ahead, empty your pockets a little bit here. I don't know what Van Pelt's making, but I know Plank's still, Under Armour's kind of rebounded a little bit lately. So I'm sure if he wants Bruce Pearl and they want to get a guy that fits, they could probably get it done.
Well, I honestly think that would be the perfect hire. That's what I mentioned this to you before. I mentioned it on, I can't remember when I think maybe when on the stream we did after Mark Turgeon left Maryland. But I think having that kind of personality as the forefront and the face of a program with fans as passionate and as crazy as Maryland fans are, I think the Under Armour connection makes sense. I think that you're going to have someone that can maybe finally reunite like that DMV area and get some of those kids to stay home. I think you're going to find someone that can bring a certain level of talent to Maryland that maybe we don't necessarily see there since they've been a part of the Big Ten. And here's the biggest thing. The style that Bruce Pearl plays, the up and down, run and gun, pace and space, shoot a bunch of threes, would be a complete and total style contrast to what they play in the Big Ten. And my biggest take and my hottest take, and I made this point to you over and over again, is I do think that the reason why we see so many Big Ten teams struggling in the NCAA tournament is they play a style of basketball that has been basically forced out of the modern game at pretty much all levels. Like everybody in the Big Ten has big, plotting, 7-foot monsters. And Auburn and the way that Bruce Pearl wants to play will just run those guys right off the floor. So I think that you can totally, I don't want to say take over the Big Ten, but you could turn Maryland into a legit power in the Big Ten by hiring a guy like a Bruce Pearl or a Nate Oates if you're going to go and try to get someone like him. I would love the Bruce Pearl hire at Maryland. It just makes sense. It works. It fits. I think you got to go get him if you can.
Yeah, and again, now we're going to wait and see. Like NC State should be up fairly soon. You think Memphis through this IARP process, those should be up fairly soon. It's going to be very interesting. I mean, NC State, I don't know how they give them that much. I mean, Mark Gottfried, it feels like he's been gone forever. He's not. He's at a new spot and has already been suspended from Cal State Northridge because of something that didn't even involve him at NC State. So, like, how Mark Godfrey, we'll get into that another time. It doesn't really matter right now. But, NC State, Memphis, Kansas is still a ways away, I think, probably through the season this year. Arizona, probably through the season this year. LSU, they haven't even gotten their notice of allegations. So, again, these things are moving at a snail's pace. And I would like to see them all, do all of them in one day during the offseason. Just hit them all. Hit them all in the offseason. Once the season's over, don't screw with these kids. Just hit them all when the season's over.
I mean, you have to get it done at some point. You have to get it done. This happened so long ago.
Or just say, hey, you know what? The goalposts have moved. And you know what? At this point, the climate's changed since 5 years ago so much.
There's no way that you can do that given the fact that like so many of these programs have already been hit or self-imposed. Arizona would have been a tournament team last year if they didn't self-impose. Yeah. And now you're just going to say, yeah, we're going to forget everything else, but Arizona still had to eat that punishment. Oklahoma State's already.
Here's my take, and I've said this before, okay? And I know people aren't going to want to hear it, some media people, but it's true. I was at ESPN when that whole thing broke with Arizona. And I will say this, if that story hadn't been written, that ESPN story, there'd be very little difference between Sean Miller and Andy Enfield. And Andy Enfield's –
Which story are you referring to? What story are you referring to?
The one about $100,000 and DeAndre Ayton and Christian Dawkins. We never heard a recording. I don't think the recording ever existed. I think that was inaccurate. And I said that when I was there at ESPN. I voiced my opinion that day. But it fell on deaf ears. And ultimately they ran it. And I don't think there's any truth to it. I really don't. And again, that put Sean Miller out there in a different light than Andy Enfield completely. But there's really not much of a difference between the two until you look at some of the other Arizona stuff with the academic fraud. If you want to say, hey, Book Richardson, Mark Phelps, academic fraud, I'm absolutely with you. Sean Miller should get hit for that. He was the head coach, and those things happened under his watch. But I still don't believe that the story that went out there that day when I was at ESPN was accurate.
Yeah, I remember that. It was like a Friday afternoon, right? And the headline was DeAndre Ayton. Sean Miller paid DeAndre Ayton $100,000 or something like that. Is that what I can't remember what it was, but
I don't know. But right. I was asked to be on at halftime to be ready. Originally, it was going to go on the 6 o'clock Sports Center. I was standing there right before the 6 o'clock Sports Center, ready to go on. Then they held it, and I thought they weren't going to run it. And then they ended up running it at halftime of maybe the first game. It might have even been the second game that night. It might have been 9:30 or 10 o'clock. It might have been that late that they held it. And I just remember going in the air and saying, listen, if this story is accurate, and I kept saying it, if this story is accurate, yes, Sean Miller should be fired. If this story is accurate, if it's accurate. And nobody else really did on that network.
Yeah. And obviously you don't, at this point, you don't believe that story was.
I do not. Nope.
Go ahead.
I don't. No, I don't believe it was accurate. I don't, and I hate to say it, but I don't. I think we would have had a leaked recording by now. Let's put it that way. We would have had a leaked recording by now of that conversation, and it never surfaced. So I think it was done in a way to by lawyers in the mix to try to make this a shit show so that the judge might throw out the entire deal. That's what I think was happening here. But again, listen. The bottom line is today's news. Auburn got to be ecstatic. Bruce Pearl got to be ecstatic, and he even gets his kid to coach a game now. You know,
Yeah, I
Stephen
was
Pearl
going to
gets to
say.
coach against North Alabama. He's going to be 1-0 after next week.
I was gonna say I like how they set it up so that the guy that doesn't have any head coaching experience is the one that's coaching against the mid major. That was I don't think that was something that was unintentional. But yeah, I mean, look, if you are Auburn at this point, that changes. I don't want to say it changes the trajectory of the program, but now that you're past it, where do you think they can go from here? Assuming that they hold on to Bruce Pearl, right? They were right there in the mix for Jalen Green. They got Sharif Cooper, who was a 5-star guy. They got Jabari Smith, who was a top 5 player in the class. Like what can this program be moving forward?
Well, I think it can be a top 25 program consistently under Bruce Pearl. It's shown that, right? I mean, realistically, it's shown that over the last, 4 years or so, that they've been able to recruit at a high level, that they've been able to win at a high level, even with this stuff hanging over their head. Now, again, all these schools have recruited at a pretty high level for the most part. Like Kansas, I put them in a different category because they're a blue blood, and I think they were probably hit more than anybody else because of all this,
Mm-hmm.
because they were getting like the Andrew Wigginses, the Joel Embiids at times. And theirs was a little bit different because Adidas doesn't have a lot of high level players. They didn't before. And then after everything happened, they had even fewer. So, I think they probably got hit more than anybody else. But, Arizona, I mean, shit, they got Nico. That one year they got Nico Mannion, Josh Green, and Zeke Naji when they were in the middle of it. USC, now again, Andy Enfield with a hell of a hire with Eric Mobley, but however they're getting it done, they're all getting LSU's getting dudes every year. I think people are numb to this whole thing. I don't think kids give a shit anymore. I think they're like,
The
you know
kids
what, this
don't.
thing's been
The
going on
kids
forever.
absolutely don't. I don't think the kids ever did.
Yeah.
Right? Half the kids. How many of these kids actually are aware that this happened? Like if you are a senior in high school right now, picking a school, you were in 8th grade, right?
Yeah.
Like you weren't
Kevin
in high,
Sweeney.
like you
Yeah,
probably most of you.
Did you see Kevin Sweeney's tweet? Our guy from
Mhm.
SI earlier today. He said when this whole thing started, he was a freshman at Northwestern. Now he's got a full-time job, a degree and a full-time job at Sports Illustrated. That's how long ago it was.
Yeah,
Stupid.
you were in 8th grade.
Stupid.
If you're a senior picking college right now, you were in 8th grade when all of this happened. I guarantee you weren't paying attention to college basketball that way. It takes too long. The process is too long. There's no reasonable explanation that this should take 4 years to hand out punishments that are 2-game suspensions. It's that should be totally unacceptable for everybody involved in this sport.
All right. On a side note,
It should not work that way.
on a side note, how excited are you for tomorrow's slate?
Oh, it's going to be great. This weekend is the first weekend where it feels like a college basketball weekend.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, Saturday, is the first Saturday where it feels like a college basketball Saturday. There's no college football games to muck it up. There's nothing to ruin it. We don't have to worry about Trevor Knight and Bryce Petty and Christian Hackenberg blowing us up about these dumb football games, okay? We can lock in on college basketball. We can get Alabama playing Houston, right, in a basketball game that's
How
actually
about
really
Nate
going to
Oates?
matter.
2 weeks in a row, 2 weekends in a row, Saturdays in a row, Nate Oates
Mhm.
has the game of the day. Give him credit. Like, while
No,
Eric
no.
Musselman is
Look.
playing the Sisters of the Poor every single
Hold,
night.
hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. That is
What?
not the game of the night, okay? You're being disrespectful to your alma mater. You're being
That's
disrespectful
a
to
5 o'clock
Arizona,
game.
potential top 5 team in the country. You're being
5 o'clock game.
disrespectful to Illinois, potential best team in the
I
Big
said
Ten.
night.
That unbelievable. The disrespect that you are showing
Listen,
to
the
Arizona
bottom
right now.
line is
You hear
I
that?
can't.
After everything he just said for you guys, Arizona fans, with DeAndre Ayton, listen to what Jeff Goodman is saying about you right now.
No, I
The
don't want to.
disrespect.
I don't want to admit that this game is going to take place because I still have visions. Remember, I started really covering college hoops professionally. I was doing recruiting, but like really 2006 was the first year. So I felt like I could kind of cheer a little bit for Arizona prior to 2006. Well, we know what happened to Arizona, Illinois in 2005.
Oh yeah.
So I just can't see Illinois again. I'm going to have visions of Roger Powell and Luther and D Brown and Darren Williams and Luther Head. Those guys. I had dinner with Roger Powell about 3 weeks ago, and it was like, I can't do this. This is like, I was like shaking. Like I don't want it. This is a bad man who kicked Arizona's ass at the end of the regional semifinal in 2005. I forget what was it, 20-5 run, 20-4 run at the end of the game. It was a joke. So,
They
you know,
they were down 15 with 3 minutes and 59 seconds left.
awful, awful, awful. Just for saying this, I hope the Bonnies kick UConn's ass in Newark earlier tomorrow. I hope they kick your Huskies.
What is it? What you don't have to go there. Why do you have to go there? That's just hey, look, that's just rude. And they're probably gonna. I mean, look, no Adama, no Tyrese Martin. Like they're just banged up, man.
Yeah, but no Kyle Lofton for Bonnies.
Yeah, that's true.
So
that's true.
It's turned into a very boring game. To be honest,
it's going to be in the 40s. That game is going to be scored because the St. Bonaventure stinks without Lofton. UConn has not been very good without Tyrese Martin and Adama Sanogo. So it is what.
What's the game then? What is Arizona Illinois clearly the game of the day?
To me, it is. It's the one that I'm the most excited for. Like Alabama Houston is a fun clash of styles, and that's going to be awesome. Don't get me wrong. I wish it wasn't at 10 o'clock at night. I wish the tip was a little bit earlier. Yeah. But for me, it's like the Arizona. I think has a chance to legitimately be a Final Four team. Illinois, with moving Trent Frazier to the lead guard spot and playing Alfonso Plummer and this whole disappearing act that we've seen from Andre Curbelo. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there, but the fact that they've kind of figured it out without Curbelo, I think that team is trending like this. So I think that we're potentially getting an Elite Eight matchup between those two teams, and I'm way more excited to watch them play because you know what the other part of it is? It's the bigger fan bases, right? Like Alabama is a football school. They're going to have people that are basketball fans that show up for games, but they're a football school, right? Same thing with Houston. Like you don't get a ton of basketball fans in the state of Texas until football season's really done there, and we're not quite done with football season. So it's the idea of having two powerhouse programs that are kind of back to national relevancy that has me really fired up for Arizona and Illinois.
Yeah, I'm just excited. I mean, Wisconsin, Ohio State. We talked to Johnny Davis last night. He's a stud. We determined, I don't know if you agree with this, but Johnny Davis is the favorite today for National Player of the Year.
I mean,
where would they be without him?
He's definitely up there. Like I think that if the season ended today, he would have to be a first team All-American. I think that Paolo, at the end of the day, is going to end up winning because I just can't see like he has the biggest bright spots of anybody when it comes to kind of like how good he can be, and hopefully they have this like this cramping issue figured out. So like in all these marquee matchups, he doesn't only play a half of basketball. But I think at the end of the day, because I do think that Duke is going to end up being like a top 5 team, whereas Wisconsin is more like a top 15 to 20-ish. We just had someone in the comments say EJ Liddell for National Player of the Year, and that's a great call. He's
it's Johnny Davis or EJ Liddell. For me, it's one or the other today.
Right now?
Yes. They mean the most to their teams, and their teams have been really good despite not having a ton around either one. Like EJ Liddell doesn't have a point guard. He's been awesome. Johnny Davis, what does he have around him? I mean, they're undefeated with him in the lineup.
I'm bringing up a top 25 just so I can kind of I need the visual for the teams.
I mean, Drew Timme, Paolo, you could Purdue
Baji's got to be somewhere in that conversation.
He's top 5,
like 20.
Yeah, he's top 5.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
it's hard to argue with.
It's a lot more wide open than I expected it to be.
Yes, everything is this year. That's the beauty of this season is it's wide open for Final Four. Like there's probably 25 teams that you could see getting a shot to go to the Final Four, and probably 12 that could win 6 straight right now. There's no dominant team. There's not.
But here's the thing about it. It's not we've seen this happen in past seasons, and it's because the teams at the top of the country aren't good, right? And I don't think that that's the case this year. I think Purdue is a very, very good basketball team. I think that Gonzaga is a very, very good basketball team. Kansas, Baylor,
Yep.
Villanova, Duke. I think UCLA when they get who's the
Cody Riley.
Cody Riley, yeah. When they get Cody Riley back, I think that they're going to be a very good
Yep.
team.
Alabama.
Arizona is very, very good. Alabama is very, very good.
Yep.
I think Michigan and Illinois are going to end up figuring it out. We got a team like LSU.
Michigan, I don't know, Rob. I'm still very skeptical on Michigan because of
what it's going to come down to for me is can Juwan find a way to get Musa Diabate and Hunter Dickinson to be able to operate together? Is Caleb Houston going to be this guy that shoots really, really well and becomes a 15-point per game threat? And I think that there's a possibility, like a realistic possibility that they can get there. I'm willing to put them in that like 15 to 20 range.
You missed the biggest question mark. You missed the biggest question mark with Michigan, point guard play. Come on.
Well, yeah, I was going to get there.
It doesn't matter. Hunter Dickinson and Diabate can be as good as they want together. But if you don't have a point guard to get him the ball, it doesn't matter. And if you don't have shooters to space the court,
I think that's why. Why do you think I just mentioned Caleb Houston? Eli Brooks, again, when he becomes the big thing for him is like the transition from being like the fifth option to now he is the primary option on the perimeter. And that's something that it's not easy to make that adjustment, right? But you're right about Devontae Jones. Like he has not been that guy yet. I think that there's a chance he could get there. Like we've seen it with Tyson Walker a little bit, right? Like it took him a little while to kind of figure it out at this level, but he's been better over the course of the last couple of weeks. So I'm not ready to write them off. But the larger point is, I do think that the fact that the NIL exists and the fact that we had all these 6-year guys come back, like Rutgers is the perfect example. I mean, as bad as they've been, they still have is he a super senior, Ron Harper Jr.?
No, I think he's a
regular season. Whatever, he's a regular senior that has been struggling a little bit this season, but is like an all-American caliber player when he gets going. At 30 and 10 last night at home, we got a little bit of action. We had Purdue getting upset. Number one gets upset. And to me, I went back and I watched the tape on that this morning. I'm a little bit more – I think that had a lot more to do with Rutgers than it did to do with Purdue. And I know that you hate doing stuff like this, but if you my belief is that if you had Purdue number one heading into that game, you should probably still have Purdue number one coming out of that game because I don't think anything that happened there
here we go with Doster math.
It's not Doster math. Did you think that Purdue was the best team in the country before last night?
They just lost at Rutgers, so they can lose 5 straight. But if you think they're the best team, you're going to keep them at number one. It's so dumb. No, it's so dumb.
It's not dumb. Who's the best team in the NBA right now?
Oh my God.
Who's the best team in the NBA right now?
Well, you would probably say the Lakers, knowing you.
No, answer the question. Who is the best team in the NBA right now, in your opinion?
I would say the best team in the NBA right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know who the best team is. I don't know if there is a best team in the NBA right now.
I'm gonna look it up right now.
Who's your best team in the NBA right now?
I pay attention to the NBA at all, but I'm just trying to make a point.
All right, so we're going to look at the standings. Golden State and Phoenix have been the best 2 teams. Yeah, Golden State, because they don't even have Clay, and they've been the best team. Golden State.
All right, so let's go to Golden State is 21-4 on the season right now, right?
Yep.
And let me just see the last time that they lost. I'm looking at it right now. They lost to the Suns last week.
They split against the Suns. 2 games.
They lost to the Suns. They lost to the Suns. They lost to the Suns last week. Oh, and they also beat the Suns.
Booker was hurt.
No, they lost to the Warriors. They lost to the Warriors 4 days
ago. They are the Warriors. They are the Warriors.
No, I'm sorry. They lost to the Spurs at home 4 days ago. Right?
They did.
The 8-13 Spurs at home, the Warriors lost. And you're still saying that the Warriors are the best team in the NBA. But Purdue, the number one team in the country, goes on the road and loses to a Rutgers team in a tough place to play, in conference play, in their first true road test since COVID was over, on a night where we're probably like a top 8 to 10 player in the Big Ten goes for 30-10, but now you're going to say that Purdue's not the best team in the country anymore. It's fine if you want to think that way, but the idea that we have to write them off as being the best team, as being the number one team, just because they lost on the road, when what you just said was that Golden State is still the best team in the NBA, despite losing at home to an 8-13 team.
You can't compare the NBA. They play 82 games. They don't play
compare.
5 games.
No, you can compare, because if you and here's the other thing: if you don't think that Purdue is the best team and you think it's close and you want to kind of nitpick, like that's fine. But if you think that Purdue is the best team in college basketball, losing on the road on a freaky buzzer beater when Ron Harper Jr. goes for 30-10 in a place that has proven to be that can pick you off, like how many ranked teams, highly ranked teams, go into the rack and lose?
Well, without Geo Baker playing. And Rutgers is 4-4.
Who cares?
And
How often?
lost to Lafayette and UMass earlier this season. That's a bad loss.
It might be a bad loss. But you know what else is a bad loss? You know what else is a bad loss? Losing at home to the San Antonio Spurs, who are 8-13.
You know what's not as bad a loss? At Ohio State. You know what's a really good win? Gonzaga on a neutral court. Kentucky on a neutral court. That's Duke's resume. That's
fine. If you think here's the thing. You always fall back on resume. For a guy that claims to be a basketball guy, you go heavy into the Gary.
That's how you should rank teams.
When you want to rank. No,
you got to rank teams.
If you don't have a basketball sense, if you don't have basketball sense, if you can watch a team and tell how good a team is, if you're a real basketball guy, you don't have to rely on resumes to tell you.
I think it's that close between Duke and Purdue that I'll give
That's fine.
Duke the nod.
There's nothing wrong with it.
I'll give them the nod because I think they've done more. They've done more to earn the number one spot right now. Their one loss at Ohio State is much more impressive than the loss without Geo Baker at the rack against a shitty Rutgers team to this point.
Yeah, and I think that I said this the other day. I can't remember where I said. I don't know if it was on After Dark or on the show with my pod with Tio and Fanta. But they were like, who do you think's the best team in college basketball, Duke or Purdue? And I was like, it's 1A and 1B.
Right.
I mean, right. I can talk myself into it. So if you want to go with, I'm not saying that Duke isn't the number one team in the country. What I'm saying is that if you went into last night thinking that Purdue was the best team in college basketball, last night probably shouldn't be the thing that sways you in the other direction. I want to throw one more thing out there before we move on.
We got to wrap.
Baylor right now is the only team in the country that it ranks in the top 10 of both offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency on KenPom. And I know there's still some preseason stuff weighted in there, so it's a little bit skewed still. But if they beat Villanova on Sunday, top 10 match or top 5 match or whatever it is, I think you have to rank them number one. I think you have to.
I'm fine with that. Absolutely. I got no problem with that whatsoever. I think you can give Baylor the number one, a win. They just haven't played enough to this point. They got to beat a really good team. And if they can get past Villanova, then they're probably deserving. And they'll probably get it.
Yep. Their profile right now looks a lot better than what it actually is. Like the win over VCU is just kind of whatever. And they beat a couple decent mid-majors. And I think like they blew out Stanford, who stinks. So it kind of is what it is. That Michigan State win, though, I think that Michigan State win is going to look really, really good come March. I feel like Michigan State turned the corner.
Yeah, they're better. All right, I got to run.
All right, this was fun, guys.
Everybody.
Somehow we went from talking about Auburn to arguing about rankings again.
Who knows? Have a good weekend, everybody. And tomorrow night after dark, fan is on. You and I are off, and make sure you check in. It's going to be a really good day. So Rob and I are definitely going to be watching again. Make sure you subscribe to the After Dark YouTube channel, Field of 68.
We'll drop a link in the description.